And still is, presumably, added Mycroft more gently for my benefit, judging by the warning glance he gave his brother. So they too feared she might be deceased. In the same sharp tone, Sherlock said, "From the state of the affairs here, it appears she may now have progressed from oddness to senile dementia. Hero or no hero, his manner was beginning to annoy me and distress me, for my mother was his mother, too. How could he be so cold? I did not know then, and had no way of knowing, that Sherlock Holmes lived his life in a kind of chill shadow. He suffered from melancholia, the fits sometimes coming upon him so badly for a week or more he would refuse to rise from his bed." "Senility?" Mycroft asked. "Can you not arrive at any more helpful deduction? Such as, you're the detective, whip out a lens of yours and detect. I have already done so. There is nothing to be learned here." "Outside, then, after a full day of rain? There will be no traces to tell which way she's gone, foolish woman." Dismayed by his tone and this comment, I left, carrying the vase of withering flowers downstairs to the kitchen. There I found Mrs. Lane crouched upon the floor with a scrub brush, scouring the oak boards fiercely. That I suspected she also was perturbed in her mind. I dumped the contents of the Japanese vase into the wooden slop bucket, on top of the vegetable parings and such. On her hands and knees, Mrs. Lane told me, on the floor. Here I was looking forward to seeing Mr. Mycroft and Mr. Sherlock again. Setting the green slimed vase in the lead-lined wooden sink, I ran water into it from the Cernton tap. Mrs. Lane spoke on. "And here it is, there's still the same old story, the same foolish quarrel. They've never had a kind word for their own mother. And maybe she's lying out there." Her voice actually broke. I said nothing, as so not to further upset her. Sniffing and scrubbing, Mrs. Lane declared, "Small wonder why they're bachelors. Must have everything in their way. They think it's their right. Never could abide a strong-minded woman." A bell rang, one of a number of bells poised on collared wires along the wall above the stove. "There now. That's the morning bell. I suppose that's them wanting lunch on, and me up to my elbows in the dirt of this floor. Having had no breakfast, I quite wanted a luncheon myself. Also, I wanted to know what was going on. I left the kitchen and went to the morning room. At the informal room, small table, sat Sherlock smoking a pipe and staring at Mycroft, who sat across from him. "The two best thinkers in England ought to be able to reason this out," Mycroft was saying. "Now, has Mother run off voluntarily, or was she planning to return? The untidy state of her room could mean that she left impulsively and in haste, or it could reflect in the innate untidiness of a woman's mind," interrupted Sherlock. "Of what use is reason when it comes to the dealings of a woman? Is very likely one in her dotage." Both of them glanced up at me as I entered the room, appearing hopeful that I might be a housemaid, although they should have known by now that there were none. "Lunch on?" Mycroft asked. "Heaven knows," I replied, as I sat down at the lunch table. "Mrs. Lane is in an uncertain frame of mind. Indeed, I studied my tall, handsome, to me at least, brilliant brothers. I admired them. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to— Nonsense, Enola. You'll do very well on your own." As for my brothers, they paid me no further heed. "I assure you Mother is neither in her dotage nor demented," said Mycroft to Sherlock. "No senile woman could have contemplated the accounts she has sent me over the past 10 years, perfectly clear and orderly, detailing the expense of installing a bathroom which does not exist, interrupted Sherlock in acid tones, "and a water closet likewise, and consistently risking salaries of the footmen, the housemaids, the kitchen maid, and the daily help, non-existent, the gardener, the under-gardener, the odd man, also non-existent unless one considers Dick." "Who is quite odd," Mycroft agreed. A joke, yet I saw no flicker of a smile on either of my brothers. I am surprised Mother did not list one Reginald Colley, who is arguably a servant at her expense. She enlisted imaginary horses and ponies, imaginary carriages, a coachman, grooms, stable-boys. There is no denying we have been woefully deceived. And as for Enola, a music teacher, a dancing instructor, a governess, a startled look passed between them as if a logic problem had suddenly grown on their face and hair, and they both turned to stare at me. "Enola," Sherlock demanded, "you have at least had a governess, haven't you?" "I have not. Mums had sent me to a school with the village children. After I had learned all I could there, she had told me I'd do quite well on my own, and considered that I read every book in Ferndeau's Hall library, from a child's garden of verses to the entire Encyclopedia of Britannia." As I hesitated, Mycroft restated the question. "You have had the proper education of a young lady?" "I have read Shakespeare," I replied, "and Arsenius and Locke, and the novels of Thackeray, and the essays of Mary Wollstonecraft." Their faces froze. I could scarcely have horrified them more if I had told them I had learned to perform on a circus trapeze. Then Sherlock turned to Mycroft and said softly, "It's my fault. There's no trusting a woman. Why make an exception for one's own mother? I should have come here to check upon her yearly, at the very least, no matter how much unpleasantness it would have induced." Mycroft just said as softly and sadly, "To the contrary, my dear Sherlock, it is I who neglected my responsibility. I am the older son." A discreet cough sounded, and came from Lane with a tray of cucumber sandwiches, sliced fruit, and a pitcher of lemonade. There was a blessed silence for a few moments until the luncheon was served. During that silence I framed a question. "What has any of this," I asked after Lane had withdrawn, "have to do with finding Mother?" Rather than answering me, Mycroft gave his full attention to his plate. Sherlock drummed his fingers, rumpling this starched lace tablecloth. "We are formulating the theory," he said at last. "And what is this theory?" Silenced again, I asked, "Am I to have my mother back again or not?" Neither of them would look at me, but after what seemed a long time, Sherlock glanced at his brother and said, "Mycroft, I think she has a right to know." Mycroft sighed and nodded, put down what remained of his third sandwich, and faced me. "We are trying to decide," he said, "whether what is happening now connects to what happened after after our father's passing away. You wouldn't remember, I suppose. I was 4 years old," I said. I remember mostly the black horses." "Quite so. After the burial, over the next few days there was a disagreement." "That's putting it kindly," Sherlock interposed. The words being battle royale came to mind. Ignoring him, Mycroft went on. "Disagreement as to the handling of the estate. Neither Sherlock nor I wanted to live here, so Mother thought that the rent money should come directly to her, and that should run Ferndale Park." "Well, she did run it, didn't she?" Yet Mycroft sounded as if he considered the idea absurd. "As I am the firstborn son, the estate is mine," he went on, and Mother did not dispute that, but she could not have seemed to see why she could not manage things for me, rather than the other way around. When Sherlock and I reminded her that legally she had no right to live here unless I permitted it, She became quite irrational and made it clear that we were no longer welcome in our own birthplace. Oh my goodness, everything seemed to turn upside down in my mind as if it were swinging by its knees from a tree limb. All my life I had assumed that my brothers kept their distance due to my shameful existence, whereas they were saying a quarrel with my mother. I could not tell how Mycroft felt regarding this revelation, or Sherlock. I could not quite tell how I felt about it either, other than bewildered, but something secret fluttered like a butterfly in my heart. I sent her a monthly allowance, Mycroft went on, and she wrote me a very businesslike letter requesting an increase. I replied by asking for an accounting of how the money was being spent, and she complied. Her continuing request for additional funds seemed so reasonable that I never refused any of them. But as we now know, her accounts were fictitious. What had actually become of all that money, we have no idea. I noticed his hesitation. But you have a theory, I said. Yes. He took a long breath. We think she has been hoarding and while planning an escapade all this time. Another breath even longer. We think she has now taken what she perceives as her money and gone to somewhere thumb her nose at us, so to speak. What on earth was he saying? That Mum had abandoned me? I sat with my mouth ajar. Pity the girl's cranial capacity, Mycroft, Sherlock muttered to his brother. And to me he said gently, Enola, simply put, we think she has run away. But that was preposterous. Impossible. She wouldn't have done that. No, I blurted. It can't be. Think, Enola. Sherlock sounded just like Mum. All logic points to that conclusion. If she were injured, the searchers would have found her, and if she were in an accident, we would have heard. There is no reason for anyone to harm her, and there are no signs of foul play. There is no reason for anyone to seize her against her will, other than ransom, for which there has been no demand. He paused for a significant breath before going on. If, however, she is alive, in good health, and doing whatever she pleases, as usual, Mycroft put in, her disorderly bedroom could be the merest blind to throw us off track. Mycroft agreed. It certainly appears that she has been plotting and scheming for years. I sat up straight like a steam whistle. But if she could have left any time, I wailed, why would she do it on my birthday? Now it was their turn to sit with their mouths slack and uncouth. I had beasted them. But at that very triumph instant it occurred to me, with a chill, that Mum had instructed Mrs. Lane to give me my gifts, just in case she were not back in time for tea, or forever. End of chapter 4.